Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's Dr. What the Hell Am I Watching review for The Witchfinders. Now, I'm gonna come right out and say that we probably had some of the best acting in the series so far this week, and of course it's from the guest stars. Alan Cumming was fantastic. Probably the most over the top performance we've had in Doctor Who since Paul Darrow all the way back in Time Lash, because he was just so, yeah, all the noisiness and gossip, and it was funny and it was entertaining. And I think Saban Finneran, if I'm pronouncing that right, as Becca Savage was really solid. It took me forever to remember who she was because I'd recognized her. I was like, I know that chick from somewhere, and it was from Downton Abbey. So that was kind of cool to see, her in the show. Um, this week the plot was, the witch finding, and we could not resist the whole. There was some lines in here that were just, once again beating you over the head with a hammer. I laughed out loud when I heard for a woman that patronized to death. It's like, okay, there's one. And then later on, when Jody said, if I was still a bloke, and it's just like, okay, here it comes. Now, it wasn't as in your face as, say, Rosa or Arachnids in the UK, but it's still there. The CGI was pretty good this week with the Morocks, which, the last, uh, there was that big section at the end where it was, kind of an exposition dump. Uh, there were a couple lines in the episode that made me laugh out loud or want to talk to the TV. The "Are you actors?" line, I just, was like, well, not all of them, because Jodie still sucks, and Yaz is still, I guess she's the one that's the empathetic one, and it's kind of okay. That's her place. Once again, Bradley Walsh was solid. I really liked his little Tarantino Ezekiel 25:17 thing at the end. That was kind of cool, being a Tarantino fan. Uh, once again, we got the disappointing Jodie at the end when King James burned the witch. Um, I think one of the highlights for me was when he was going on and on with Jodie at the beginning about oh, the women, the noisiness and gossip. And I mean, Alan Cumming was definitely the highlight of this episode. Uh, did anybody notice once again that Ryan's no dyspraxia for Ryan this week, especially when he's waving the torch at the end against the Morax monster? So it's kind of like, once again, I'm pointing that out, that it comes and goes. It's a plot device. One week he's got dyspraxia, the next week it's never mentioned, but yet he's doing, stuff. I can tell that, or it's quite obvious when we've got a different writer that they're trying to be Who. Just kind of like last week with Kerblam. It's trying to be Who. It's still not quite getting there because the lack of weight in Jodie's performance. Um, it's still not doctorish. And I thought about doing this video about because we've not really had a doctor that's been this kind of disloved since Colin Baker, and I thought about doing a Colin versus Jodie video, and I still might, because I did reference Time Lash earlier, and compared to some of the stuff we've got this season, Time Lash is a damn masterpiece, and the Twin Dilemma as well, and those are two of the most ridiculed episodes in the history of Who. This is still, I feel like, it's kind of a two steps forward, one step back kind of thing, or two steps forward, five steps back, because every time we get an episode that starts to feel kind of like Who, or has sort of a classic Who vibe, we still get these sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle, SJW moments, like I mentioned earlier, the "if I were still a bloke" line, and uh, the "patronize the death" line, that I think, stuff like that, it just beats you over the head. But it was kind of, we did, this has kind of been the first episode all year where the gender change has kind of affected the storyline because the whole, Witchfinder General, and no, it's Graham. Graham has to be the Witchfinder General. You can't to us at a woman. And it was, eventually it was going to have to happen because when you make a gender change to the main character and then you go back to a time to where, women weren't treated as equals, yeah, that's going to happen. But the spin on it, I just, I don't know. It makes me glad I've got a BritBox subscription so I can go back and I can watch Classic Who whenever I want because, as I've stated, this has been a season that there's been no episodes that I'm just dying to go back and rewatch, and it still doesn't feel like Who. This episode, the previous episode, Kablam, they're trying, and you can tell it's a different writer, which I've already made that point, but I'm making it again because I'm running out of shit to say about this episode. But it's still not there. It's still not there. I'm going to give this a 5 because of Alan Cumming and Saban Finneran. I thought the supporting acting was great. The mud zombies, or the Morax, they looked good. But I still felt there was kind of an agenda being pushed, and it was, a whole lot. There was more subtlety to it this week than in previous weeks, but it's still not Doctor Who. And we only got 2 weeks left, and I've given positive reviews to 2 episodes out of 8. I think this was middle of the road, kind of like last week. You can tell there's wanting to be some progress being made, but not it's too late. I mean, this is the equivalent of a losing season in football. So, and speaking of football, yay, the Bills won 2 in a row. Anyway, I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to give The Witchfinders a 5 out of 10 just for, Alan Cumming and Saban Finneran, and the CGI was good. And has anybody noticed that Graham keeps saying Doc? He said it like every week, and in the past, kindly not refer to me as Doc. Yeah, Jodie's not done that. It's kind of, I think we're missing a callback to the classic Who that, maybe that's just me nitpicking, and it probably is, but it's just not the same show. All right, I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week. Keep on keeping on. May the force be with you.